to see the difference between class component and functional component. So we opened already our Visual Code. We create the component folder, and we create also here the class component or the class counter.jsx. Okay, we'll start normally by creating our class counter and then our functional counter, like so. Okay, we'll see the difference between them. Let's start by class counter. Here it is. Okay, we'll start by importing React and component also from React, like so. It's so simple. Component, like so, from React. And then also we'll try to create our component from scratch, like so. The method will be a class count extend component. That means that we will create our class from this component, which is the old version of React.js. First of all, we'll create the constructor, like so, and we'll pass props as parameter. Okay, it's the old version as I said. Okay, the super also methods, like so, and then this dot state, which will update our state. The count will be like initial state or initial value equal to 0, like so. Okay, this is the syntax of class component, as I said, which is the old version of React component. Okay, we see then normally we'll try to return something. So normally we'll create the render if you want. Okay, let's start to create the method increment that will increment our counter, like so. Increment as arrow function, and then inside we create this dot set state to update our state. Inside the parentheses and curly brackets, the count will be like this dot state dot count plus 1. Okay, like so. It's so simple. Okay, then in our class component we need the method render normally, like so. Okay, yes, I will create the render if you want. So let's make a comment before, just to make things understandable and to clarify the difference. So we have to declare the render method, okay, or the render function, okay, just to fire our component or to run our component, the render method, like so. Okay, and then we have to return our result, like so, return, and then we have to create our div if you want. Let's see. Okay, we create our div, and then we create our counter. It will be like span if you want, and then we have the count, which is the result of the count or the update when the counter update, like so. This dot save dot count, which is the result of the count when it increment, and then we'll add the button on click this increment. Okay, the on click will fire the function of incrementation, like so. It's so simple. Okay, for now we can save. This is the button increment to be understandable and meaningful as well. Save and see together how it works. Here in our app.js, which is our entry point, we need to call our component. The name of our component, let's see, counter. Okay, class counter. We need to export. Yes, like so. Export class counter, and then we can call here. Normally it will work. Yes, counter, like so. Save and see together how it works. Okay, we didn't see anything right now. Okay, let's try to check together why it doesn't work. Okay. I guess we forgot some parameter. Okay, let's check together. Export class counter, extend. Okay, we'll try to comment. Okay, the comment help us to understand more and more, which is this is the setup, or it is the setup, just a setup of our counter, class counter. This dot state will make comment also to understand how it works exactly. It's about changing the state or something like that, or updating the state if you want. We try to make things clear. Okay. And then we have the method of incrementation, which will update the state from 0 and increment 1 by 1. Okay. Sorry, it's about initialization of the state, which is count equals 0. It's about initialize or initializing the state, and here in our function it is about updating the state and changing the state like so. Okay, those kind of commands are very important, are mandatory to understand more of the code, to see how it works exactly. Okay, here we can add also the render method. The render is related to, for example, to the UI update. And yes, normally our code is very clean, and it should work properly. Okay, we can make the command here using this class component, which is the old version. Okay. Now let's save. We will try to make things clear, so it's too complex. Okay, let's try to create our function component like so. Use the RFCE, which is the extension from React snippets. Okay, inside our function components, it's so simple and so easy. We just try to initialize our use state, count, and the set count equal to use state, which is the hook from Reacjs, like so. Use state, and we call use state to initialize the value will be about 0, and then we can create our span inside the return and the div, the count like so. Okay, and then we can add the button, which is responsible to increment our count. Okay, the button with the on click event. Okay, on click, and then we'll fire our function, which is set count. The set count function here is responsible to fire or to increment the count 1 by 1, and we can pass as parameter count plus 1 to increment 1 by 1. We can add some styling if you want, something like, for example, margin, just to be more visible and to see the UI more clean. Okay, we can add the name of the button, which is increment. If you want, you can base it on function component just to make the difference between both of buttons. Okay, let's see together. Okay, we need to also to call our component here on the entry point, which is function component or functional counter. Okay, it's so easy. And then yes, save and see normally together how it works. Okay, let's go to our screen, so it increment correctly. Also about the class, it increment correctly. So both of methods are working correctly and properly, but just the function component is so easy and useful for most of developer nowadays, and the class is a little bit complex. So let's try to make the command using functional component like so. We need just to mention that this function component is too clean and short also, like so. Easy to understand if you want, or especially with the use of hooks, something like that. Okay, like use state, save and see together. Here the syntax is too simple, too short, too clean. It's useful. It's used by most of developer nowadays because hooks make things more easy to implement. We can see the difference here between class component and function component in terms of code complexity. So the class is too long to implement, but the function component is too short, and it more optimized. Hope you love this video, and see you next video.